Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special kind of tutorial video. Today we'll be talking about a very interesting kind of architecture, or something that is not really being dwelled upon in the beautiful world of internet, the WCF. Now if you go on to the internet and see what WCF is all about, you are gonna get confused just like I did when I started out with WCF. Now, when I started out with WCF, my prime objective was to get two applications to talk to each other. It's not a simple task, believe me. If you go into the C# or C++ coding, you have to write a hell lot of code to write a communication link between two different applications. And that's how I found out that Microsoft amazingly had this beautiful application layer which does that communication for you. And in a gist, WCF, which stands for Windows Communication Foundation, is just that. It is an application layer which oversees your communication layer, and it gives you a beautiful interface using which you can communicate between two different applications which are in totally different architectures as well. It is that great. So WCF basically means a communication layer between your applications. So let us talk about why do we need this WCF platform. Well, you see that sometimes there is a need for two different kind of things to communicate. There needs to be a mechanism wherein messages can be passed from one application to a different application and vice versa. Now you can write your own logic of communications between these two using files or using a physical connection using TCP, HTTP or something like that, but that logic is going to be tedious. So what if I said to you that I will just click a button and that logic will be ready? You just have to write down what is the application doing or what is the message that is passing. Now that sounds wonderful for people who want to achieve that functionality, and WCF exactly does that. It fulfills the need for a communications layer between your applications. So in today's tutorial video, we have talked about what is WCF, why do we need WCF, and now I'm just going to show you a very basic WCF project and just explain to you what are the different components in the most basic sense of a WCF application. So we are using the Microsoft Visual Studio 2012, and let's go to File, New, Project, and you're going to see a lot of options for WCF as well. So we'll just go to Visual C#, and instead of using the web, which we normally do for our websites, we're going to go to WCF. Now you see there are four different kinds of WCF applications rather. We have the WCF service library, service application, workflow service application, and a syndication service library. Now these four elements can be researched on Google because they are extensive to talk about, but the two things that we really need to care about are these two: the WCF service library and the WCF service application. What this does is basically build a library that is a set of methods which can be exported in DLL and which can be hosted independently. That is, you can create an exe or you can create a DLL of this particular WCF service and then use it in some different application altogether for the communications to work. Or you can create an independent application which runs on its own, so any application outside can then connect to this particular WCF service application, and these two things are going to be used quite extensively, and it will depend on what is your need. Do you need a DLL which can be imported into different applications or which can be used independently, or do you need an application itself for your communications, because you need to log a lot of things, you need to check about who is connecting to it and who is not connecting to it, and so many other things that you can do. So what we are going to do is we're going to just create a basic service library. So we have this WCF service library selected, so let's write down WCF test. Beautiful. Now we're going to click on OK, and it's going to do its magic, and it's going to create a beautiful WCF application for us. So let it do its magic. It takes a little bit of time. And there we go. So number one thing that you need to do is go to Solution Explorer. Now this is the project file that you see. These are all the files that are there in your solution. Now there's a very interesting thing. When you start with it, it's going to be a little confusing as to what is WCF actually about and how do I write my code in WCF. Well, there are two components which are of essential needs to be serviced first. Number one is the interface itself. This is the iService1.cs class. This is the most important part of your WCF data coding procedure. And the next part is the Service1 implementation. This is the key. This is the absolute key to your application's logic. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down what are the functions that this service is going to provide in the interface, that is the iService1, and then we are going to write down what is the logic or what is the things that this particular functions are going to actually do, that is the business logic of it in this particular implementation of the iService1 class, that is the Service1.cs. Now the WCF default service library has giving you two basic methods over here. This is a string get data, which takes in an integer value as its parameter, and this is a composite type get data using contract. And we're not going to be bothered about this particular thing. We're going to be bothered about this thing because this is what we are going to need in its core. So what we're going to do is understand what iService1 is doing for us right now. The number one thing is the annotation that we see over here, that is the service contract. You see, any application that wants to use this particular WCF needs to abide with this service contract. The service contract specifies that this is the class, or this is the interface rather, which the service is going to use. So this becomes a contract for the communication between application. So this particular service contract is the first thing that you need to write about your interface, that is iService1. And all the basic functions that you're going to write down in your iService1 interface is going to be an operational contract, that is an operation contract. Operation contract basically specifies that this particular function can be used in the service itself. So that provides the mechanism for the service to identify that these are the functions that the service can provide. So we have a string get data with an integer value as a parameter. Now this is an operation contract. That means that we can use this particular function in our communication with a certain application. So what we are going to do is now look at the implementation of this get data. As I said, iService1 is the interface and Service1 is the class which actually implements the interface. So as you can see, it's a public class, Service1, which is implementing the iService1. And as you can see, both those functions which were defined in iService1 have been implemented in this particular class. The get data, string get data function, which was defined in the iService1 interface, is just returning a formatted string value of the integer that was passed. So you're going to say you entered and then the value, and the value is going to be converted from integer into string, and this particular string will be passed on to the function that is get data in the iService. So this is the absolute basic of what a WCF service does. This service is going to be running, and you can then call this particular function which is going to return a string to you. Now that was the most basic and most important thing. Now what is this particular get data using data contract. You see, there can be complex objects that you need to pass on to your application, and this complex object is not a basic string, integer, or even a boolean value. You need something which is a complicated object. There are lots of things in it, and you want to pass that particular object itself to the application which is going to connect to this service. Well, that can be achieved using the data contract annotation. The data contract specifies a sort of bond or a class or an object which can be passed to the application which connects to this particular service. And that's why you see there is this data contract annotation which is used about this particular class, which is called composite type. And you can see the data contract has data members in it. Data members are the physical values of the variables which are actually going to be accessible to the application which connects to this service. If you come on to the service1.cs class, you can see that if it is null, they're just going to implement a very basic kind of thing. This is going to say if the composite which is passed is null, it's going to say argument null exception. It's going to throw an exception. And if it is not null, it does have a boolean value attached to it, it is going to pass on a string value saying suffix, which is going to be appended to this particular composite object. And then we're going to return the object itself. You can see here the return type is composite type, and then the service internally is going to return it to the application which connects to it. So it can be a little complicated to understand in the beginning, but once we get down to actually coding an application which connects to this library, it's going to be really simple to understand. Now the question comes, how does one understand that this particular service one is being implemented in this particular service one class? The I service is being implemented here, and the logic or the business logic is over here. How does the application come to know that this particular thing is happening? Well, you see, the application comes to know using this particular configuration file. As you can see, it is binding using the basic HTTP binding. You can see over here it's a basic HTTP binding, and to access this particular service you have to use this particular URL. And here you see the difference. It is not iService which we are accessing. We are actually accessing the base, which is service 1. So that is how it identifies that service 1 is the one which is going to give you back your business logic, and not iService. So iService is going to be the contract, but service 1 is going to be the class which is going to give you back your business logic. And that is how the app configuration works. So I believe that we have covered the absolute basics of this particular WCF service library. We're not going to go into details right now because we're going to write down an application which is going to access this WCF in our next tutorial video, and that is the point where you're going to completely understand how to use WCF. So I do hope that you did understand quite a lot of things that I have put forward here. If you have any questions or any doubts or even suggestions in improving this particular tutorial series, just write down in the comments section below. If you liked my video, kindly do subscribe because there are plenty more coming down the line. And if you have anything that you did really like about the video, then please do leave a like or even a dislike if you did not like something. So thank you for watching and have a good time.